Should the New Orleans Saints pursue all-pro wide receiver Davante Adams? Derek Carr reunion in New Orleans? No. All right, next video. JK, somehow this has become a conversation. I mentioned this in a video earlier this week, but every single player, DK Metcalf, Joey Bosa, Davante Adams, Christian Kirk, every single player who has been either released or put on the trade block by their respective team, New Orleans Saints internet community has popped off and said, we should trade for him. We should sign him. Guys, no, we should not. Like, this is a multiple choice question where it's like, should the Saints sign or trade for? And then it's like 40 people listed. And at the very bottom, it should say no to all the above. The Saints are not in that world right now. The Saints right now are trying to get younger. They're trying to get cheaper. They're trying to rebuild the roster. They are trying to shed old contracts. They are trying to, they're trying to shed older players. They're trying to just completely renovate. That doesn't jive with a 32-year-old expensive AF receiver who is friends, apparently, with a quarterback who might as well be Bigfoot because no one has seen him in months. But a quarterback who, God, what is going on with my microphone here? Just got a mind of its own today. Who you are going to restructure and you're going to pull the old Russell Wilson where he plays this year, and then you're going to offload him. So let's go ahead and listen to Matthias, what he thinks about this.
We saw the news that the Jets are releasing Davante Adams. Free agency begins next week. The tampering period begins Monday. Free agency period follows. Davante Adams will be a free agent for the first time in his career. Interestingly, our friends at DraftKings have odds for Davante Adams' next team. At the top of the list, his former team, the Green Bay Packers, a reunion, plus 190. Chargers are next, followed by the 49ers, Rams, Steelers, Broncos, Patriots. Keep going, still not gotten to the Saints.
Thank God.
Saints are at 50-1.
Thank God.
To land Davante Adams in free agency.
That means it ain't happening. That's what you can read into that. 50-1 means not a thing.
It is really odd that the Saints are that far down this list because...
No, it is not.
Remember, the Saints are one of the teams that were in the Davante Adams trade sweepstakes during the season. When the
Does anybody in the class want to answer what could be different about the Saints from the last time Davante Adams was involved in trade talks and right now? Anybody? I'll give you a hint. Kellen Moore.
Raiders ultimately chose to do business with the Jets instead of the Saints. But the Saints were in the mix. They were trying to reunite Carr and Davante Adams. We all remember the story. Their college teammates played together at Fresno, played together with the Raiders. Then Carr comes to the Saints, and then the Raiders traded Adams to the Jets. Remember, this was Derek Carr when he was asked if he, this was in October the 4th. Does he want to play with Davante Adams again?
Yeah, of course he's going to. We remember this. We're going to skip this part. We're going to skip the Carr quote.
So there's a couple of things that you got to consider here.
Yeah, there are. Davante Adams is old. Davante Adams is expensive. The Saints don't have the cap or the need to do it, as far as they're not going to get Davante Adams to try and win this year. They're not in the world to win. Also, the quarterback who you are appeasing by going to get Davante Adams is not on good standing. As far as going into last year, there was still the idea of like, well, we still have Carr this year, might have him next year. Who knows if he plays well? You can see him out for his entire contract. Who knows? Now, we are past that. Now we are past that to where if he restructures and he's playing this year, fine, but it's going to be a Russell Wilson situation where he's also out of the door. So you're not appeasing Derek Carr. Don't forget this. Kellen Moore, the entire coaching staff, no one on the staff has any ties to Derek Carr. Any. Pete Carmichael, Dennis Allen, their waiter at Ralph's on the Park are the only people who has ties to Derek Carr. All right? And Carmichael and Allen are gone. The waiter, I'm sure, is still there. But so I keep hammering this point home. When I keep hearing about like Saints players or project players or lines of thinking from a couple of years ago or developmental players from a couple of years ago, like I don't think everyone understands how big of a shift Kellen Moore and his coaching staff coming to the Saints are. It is a shift in every single way. Like it's like we have a date like 2025 BM where BM can be before Moore. Anything that happened after Moore AM, like that starts now. After AM happened after Moore, go in the future. Hashtag after Moore in the comments below, ladies and gentlemen, and head on into the future. But when I keep hearing about like plans for Derek Carr, ideas for Carr from 2 years ago, ideas for Kendra Miller from last year, Jordan Mims from last year, this from last year, that from 2 years ago, Raiders, Dennis Allen, like all this stuff. Like the Saints have made a huge effort to get away from that. And they have made a huge effort to march forward and to rebuild this thing and renovate this thing. So these ideals of like anything that we were hearing last year or the year before, it does not jive right now.
Do you need the help? Can you afford it? What would it cost? And then would Davante Adams come to New Orleans? Like those are the questions that have to be asked. So first of let's start with the most obvious one, the easiest one. You're the New Orleans Saints. Would you like to have Davante Adams on your team? Of course you would like to have Davante Adams on your team because basically the combination of quarterbacks the Saints rolled out there were thrown to dudes that were has-beens, never-weres, pulled off the scrap heap.
Davante Adams is obviously better than Bub Means and Mason Tipton and whoever else. I mean, he's probably better than Chris Olave and certainly better than Rashid Shaheed. But that's not really the question, right? Like, if you want help at a receiver, would you rather have whatever you got to do to get Davante Adams as far as like his contract and all that stuff, or would you rather draft Savion Williams or Trey Smith? Like, because you could do that, and you could get your wide receiver help that you need on a rookie contract on a young player. You know, like this is certainly not the only way to get the receiver help that you need. Players like Tyler Lockett, right? They're available. You know, like there's a lot of moving and shaking here. I'm not saying Tyler Lockett's the answer or anything, but you can go in other areas to find a cheaper, more available option if you don't want to go through the draft and you want to solve this from free agency and you think we need somebody who can help. We need someone who can help out Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. Who can we get? Who is an Adam Thielen type player for us, like Adam Thielen in Carolina, where it's like, all right, you know, veteran, reliable, stable player, just kind of balance out the wide receiver room until we figure the rest out. Who can that be? It ain't Davante Adams, unless Davante Adams agrees to a tremendous pay cut.
After Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed got injured, your leading pass catcher was Juwan Johnson. Yeah. Your actual wide receivers, they pulled Marquez Valdez-Scantling off a couch, and he started catching touchdowns.
Yeah.
You also had Cedric Wilson, Kevin Austin, Dante Pettis, Bub Means, and Mason Tipton. That's the list of wide receivers that caught a pass for the New Orleans Saints
I was there.
in 2024.
We were there.
Olave, Shaheed, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Cedric Wilson, Kevin Austin, Dante Pettis, Bub Means, and Mason Tipton.
Yeah.
Once Olave and Shaheed went down, you were screwed.
Yeah, we said that all year.
Davante Adams, while 32 years old, still had a very productive season. Remember, started the season with the Raiders, got traded to the Jets, and that wasn't great, but he still finished the season with 85 catches for 1,063 yards and 8 touchdowns. That was in 14 games. So he missed 3 games, still had over 1,000 yards receiving and 85 catches, 8 touchdowns, far and away would have led the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, for sure.
So do you want Davante Adams? Yes. Even at 32 years old, he is still proven he is not just a good, but he can be an elite receiver in the NFL still now at 32. So yes, of course you want him. It's why you were willing to.
But like the want is the least relevant out of the entire equation, because obviously you want all of the players. That's the whole point of the salary cap. It's the whole point of like why there are restrictions. Like, yes, you want DK Metcalf. Yes, you want Davante Adams. Yes, you want Joey Bosa. Yes, you want Christian Kirk. Yes, you want all of these players. Hell, you want Aaron Rodgers. You want Sam Darnold. No doubt. Sure. But that doesn't really have anything to do with anything.
To trade for him during the season. That's the easy one. The second one is, can you afford it?
No.
Well, if you look up at Spotrac,
the afford is also kind of a different. Like you have to ask it differently, because you probably, like the way that the NFL salary cap and all that stuff works, you could probably theoretically afford anybody beyond like huge like $200 million contracts, but you could probably afford almost anyone if you get cute enough with the contracts and all that stuff. The real question is, should you jump through the hoops and should you complicate things in order to afford Davante Adams? Because that's the main question, and that is the main answer. That answer would be no. It probably is not worth it on a 1-year basis to do this. If he is super, super cheap and it doesn't really impact anything and it doesn't really matter and he's willing to take a huge pay cut to play with Derek Carr, then yeah, whatever. Who cares? Like, sure, fine. But if you got to jump through hoops and restructure this and push this into the future, and then that delays this, and then this, like if all that starts coming into question, then no. Why would you do it? Is Davante Adams' impact going to change the forecast of next season? No. He is not a. If the Saints without Davante Adams are a 6-win team, with Davante Adams, they are a 6-win team. He does not lift that team enough. And unless the Saints know something I don't know, then I don't think they are approaching this season with the ideas of like, hey, look, we're going to try and win 10 games, 11 games. Davante Adams can get us there. So this would be a stark pivot from their philosophy as of right now.
And again, this is taking into account market comparisons. What would it cost for Davante Adams? What, based on comparables, age, production, all that sort of stuff, what would be the market value for Davante Adams? Well, according to Spotrac, they've got his market value at $13.6 million average annual salary.
Yeah.
They project a 2-year, $27.1 million deal. Now, does that get it done? I have no idea, but that's a good barometer to look and say, could you do a 2-year, $27 million deal with an average annual salary of about $13.6 million? Now, you and I both know the Saints are in a terrible cap situation, but you and I also know that the New Orleans Saints will do whatever they have to do, structuring, restructuring. I love the way Mike Triplett said it. It's basically just taking the balance, transferring it to a new credit card, extending your line of credit. That's what they do every year. The debt.
You know what's kind of funny about that? So it's funny because if you have a credit card or if you have a mortgage, then you can't pay credit with credit. So you can't pay your mortgage payment with a credit card. Because if you could, that is what people would do. People would just stack credit and move credit around because that's obviously better than paying with cash, right? If you could do this, if you could take your balance of your credit card and banks were willing to allow you to transfer it from one card to the next card and just keep moving it around in order to reset the interest or extend the payments or whatever, and there was no negative, you would absolutely do that. Like, that would make, for sure, the most sense. 100%. If you could just continually keep getting free loans, basically, and interest-free loans from a bank, and a bank just continued to allow you to do it, why would you ever pay the credit card? It would make no sense to pay the credit card. It would make so much more sense to just keep moving it around and just letting it exist, because it's not doing anything to you and you have no incentive to pay it. So it is like, that is what NFL teams do, because the Saints certainly aren't the only ones, but that is what the Eagles do. That is what the Saints have done. That is what teams do. Teams believe that the NFL is going to give them an interest-free, basically a loan forever, and they can just, if they can keep extending out the lifetime of the loan, and there's no negative, then they'll do that. So it's an apt comparison, but I do think it's interesting that it gets kind of a negative connotation when, if you think about it, like, you would obviously do that.
That never goes away. The debt just keeps piling up, but you just get creative with the way you structure it. So you just keep having money to spend now that isn't actually yours.
Yeah,
the NFL just perpetually loans you the money.
That's like exactly, I mean, I don't want to get into like an economics conversation, but that's exactly what people do who use leverage to buy things. Like you always hear about people who like leverage like a house or something in order to get a large line of credit to then buy another property or something, because they won't have the capital to buy it, but they have the leverage in order to get the loan, which is like exactly how you're supposed to do business. You know, no, you're never supposed to just like deploy huge, large amounts of capital in order to, you know, invest in whatever, a business or buy real estate.
So could they make it work? Yes. Could they make it work? Yes. The bigger question is whether or not Davante Adams would want to come to New Orleans. And I don't know that you could really answer to the affirmative. Like, Carr and Adams have a good relationship. By the way, in that same interview on October the 4th, this was Derek Carr talking about his relationship with Davante Adams.
All right, we're going to skip this again. We know Carr calls Davante Adams Tay. We know that they're tight. They talk all the time, whatever, you know.
Enough of a pull for Davante Adams to want to play with Derek Carr again. Maybe, but probably not. Because right now, Davante Adams has done just about everything. He has made Pro Bowls. He has been an All-Pro. He has made the playoffs. In 11 seasons, Davante Adams' career earnings, $129 million. Career earnings, $129 million. Dude has a Taco Bell in his house. I get it, that's just a commercial. But the point being, he's made money. He's been to Pro Bowls. He's been an All-Pro. He's made the playoffs, which is the one thing he hasn't done. He hasn't won the last game. So, if you go to New Orleans and you understand, like, he ain't just on the back nine of his career. He's like getting close to the clubhouse. You don't have that many more bites at the apple. You don't have that many more at-bats. So look at the list again with me. When you look at the odds for what Davante Adams' next team will be. Packers, Chargers.
Sidebar, but let's pretend like you're the Cincinnati Bengals, okay? I think this is kind of interesting because I think the Bengals have completely messed up the T. Higgins, Trey Hendrickson situation. But it does kind of make you wonder, like, I wonder why the Bengals didn't let Higgins walk, sign Hendrickson, and then try and work out like a 1-year, 2-year deal with Adams. Because it kind of fits more, you know, I'm not as glued into the Bengals cap situation, all that stuff, but you would think like that's a team who's trying to win right now. They are doing everything they can to keep this core together. And as far as like a second receiver, Davante Adams is still, like Matt said, he can still be good. And I'm sure he would want to go play with Joe Burrow. And I'm sure that's quite the selling point. And in this situation I'm talking about, you get to keep Trey Hendrickson and help your defense out, which needs help drastically over there. So it's kind of weird. You always wonder, like, I wonder if teams think about that, or if they're too, or like it was never even a thought of like, hey, we can let Higgins walk, and then we can try and replicate something with Adams, or go get somebody else. But
Niners, Rams, you seeing a commonality here, a theme here? Steelers.
I don't know what we're talking about. The commonality is that they all need wide receivers. They all are in win now mode, which makes sense to go get a 32-year-old expensive receiver.
Broncos, Patriots. Packers, Chargers, Rams, Steelers, Broncos all made the playoffs last year. The Niners were in the Super Bowl year before last. The one outlier on this list is New England. All this to say, Davante Adams probably isn't going to go to the place that's given him the most money or where he's got the best relationship with the quarterback. He's done that. He's probably going to go where he can win. This is the first time in his career where Davante Adams is an unrestricted free agent. He gets to decide. He was drafted by the Packers. He stayed with the Packers. He then went to, was traded to the Raiders and then to the Jets. So this is the first time that he gets to decide as an unrestricted free agent what he wants to do. And my guess is, given everything else he's done in his career, what he's going to want to do is go somewhere where he can win.
Like this is way inflating the power of the player. Because if that was the case, the Chiefs would be way up on that list. The Eagles would be way up on the list or whatever. But, the Ravens would be way up on the list. But I think in this situation, it's reversed. It's the team first. It's the team. Which teams need a wide receiver, can win now, and can make the offer? That is what's making up the top of that list. That's why the Chargers and teams like that who are absolutely starved for wide receivers, the Niners who just traded away Deebo Samuel, like that's why those teams are high on the list. I think what's inflated is how much it matters to have a relationship with players and how much that stuff really matters, and the power of the player, especially the power of a 32-year-old player.
That ain't New Orleans. I know it. You know it. Davante Adams knows it. The only people who seemingly don't are the people there on Airline Drive. Would I want to see Davante Adams in the black and gold? Absolutely. I mean, he is still a legit number one receiver in the NFL. He's not the best receiver in the NFL like he was 5 years ago.
Yeah, he is good. But I would also like to see DeAndre Hopkins in the black and gold. I would also like to see DK Metcalf. I would also like to see literally anyone, basically, because we just watched a full season of Kevin Austin. So, I mean, anybody, just be a starting wide receiver. I'd love to have you in the black and gold.
That's now some argument between Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. You choose sides. But is he still a legit number one receiver in the NFL? Yes. And on a team that last year saw Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Cedric Wilson, Kevin Austin, Dante Pettis, Bub Means, and Mason Tipton catch passes? Do I want Davante Adams on the Saints? Is the Pope Catholic? Does a bear poop in the woods? Am I bald?
I mean, there's got to be... I mean, there's honestly probably 30 wide receivers who... It's like, yes, I would absolutely like to see them for the Saints. Cooper Kupp, sure, yes. Chris Godwin, yes, please, sure. Whatever. Fine. Like, anyone. 20 different people in the draft alone. So,
Hell yeah, I want Davante Adams on the Saints. The question is, does Davante Adams want the Saints? And the answer to that, unfortunately for all of us, is probably not just no, but hell no. Make the phone call. Shoot your shot. Shoot or shoot.
I think you have the conversation, but the conversation needs to be like, hey, look, we love to have you play with Derek Carr again, but you will have to take a cut to the tune of whatever, $8 million. We could figure something like that out. We could restructure some stuff, give you a base salary of $1 million, give you $7 million in bonuses and incentives, and then call it a year. But I don't know. I don't know if that call gets past his agent. I don't know if that call even gets to his desk. So, and I'm sure you also got to wonder at this point too, like how much weight Derek Carr has in that front office. Like Derek Carr right now is, I don't want to say in a restructuring battle, but Derek Carr's kind of doing his own thing right now. Like he's doing his own, like, hey, what's my future here? What's my contract here? What's my restructure here? What's going on here? What's the plan? That's not exactly the highest leverage opportunity to be like, oh yeah, also, can you bring my friend on in? And that seems like a weird time to do that. So I don't know. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Davante Adams, yes or no? 50-1. Are you taking it over there with Johnny Avello and the boys at DraftKings? I use DraftKings at Sportsbook. I don't use them as much as some of the other ones. Caesars is by far my top one. Caesars, FanDuel, BetMGM, BetRivers. If I could only have two, this is controversial, I'd probably have Caesars would be number one. I like BetRivers a lot, honestly. BetMGM's good too. Those are good. Those are nice. But DK, their horse betting app is incredible. If you want to bet horses, DraftKings Horse is the best one by far. User interface is incredible, and you get to watch every single race on the app. So whether you're betting Santa Anita, Del Mar, Saratoga, you're betting the fairgrounds, whatever, you can just sit there, watch the horses, bet on them. Super easy. And it's one of my favorite. That's one of my favorite things in the world. So, but DK is crushing that. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next